We go from feeling the pleasure of God to wondering where he is. This is all a part of his plan and process. Joseph had the same experience. He tells his dream, and he's full of feeling the favor of God. He's like, wow, look at this. I have this dream. I have this revelation of what's going to happen. Genesis chapter 37, verse 23. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, of his very identity. How many of you feel as though you're being stripped of your very identity? Everything that you thought you stood for, everything that you thought you were working toward. But you had the dream. God prophesied it over you. Other people said things to you. You've had this thing and this knowing within you. They took him and they threw him into a pit. And the pit was empty and there was no water. That water represents the word of the Lord. How many times have you picked up the Bible in dark seasons and it's as though it's just not, there's no water? I'm reading. I'm not getting anything new. I feel like I'm feasting off of old manna. God, help. What is going on? You're in a dark season. Are you going to trust him? They sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of the Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, and their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carrying it down to Egypt. By the way, if you ever have a dream with a camel, just know that provision is coming. Camel always represents provision. True story. Then Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our flesh. And his brothers listened to him. Then the Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him up out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt, and we know the story so well. He gets falsely accused. He gets thrown into a dungeon. That doesn't look like a new day. It doesn't look like his dream. There was a character that was getting molded during that season so that his dream could actually come to pass. Come on, we need our character developed and molded in this season, so that we are actually prepared to carry a level of holiness of the Lord, that when the harvest comes, we can be the discipler of disciples. That's why it says, come out from among them and be separate, not because you're better than them, but because there's a need for us to look different. I'm blown away when I'm hearing stories about the fact that elementary schools, from the age of fourth grade up to like 6th or 7th grade, that there are children here in Grand Rapids that are taking hormone blockers. You know, who are wanting to, a girl wants to be a boy wants to be a girl. Are you kidding me? And what does the church do? Stay silent. There's coming a time when the light shines, our voice has got to go forth. These are formative years for our children. Me, myself, my child wouldn't be in that school any longer. And you say, oh, but there'll be a light in a dark place. There'll be a time for that child. But these are formative years. And they're around children that are bringing absolute confusion. When they're teaching about oh, I don't know who's all in here. When they're teaching about things that are just absolutely perverted. Perverted. When there's pornography in the libraries of public schools, that's a problem. When it seems as though that the darkness is getting darker, it becomes harder to follow and trust God. And this is where the test begins. Disconnection. We'll have disconnection with old beliefs, ideas, and emotions. It may involve detaching ourselves from dysfunctional aspects of relationships. In this disconnection, it will involve change. Orpah was unwilling to emotionally disconnect with her people in Moab, but Ruth was willing. All alone, Ruth followed Naomi to Bethlehem, the place of visitation and inheritance. Because of her willingness to disconnect with what was familiar to her, she stepped into her inheritance. In this season, God is asking, and it's a process. See, that's why we need this new day. Because it's during this season that you feel it's a strange feeling. It can feel confusing. When you're disconnected, you feel lonely. You feel desperate to hang on to something. Make something happen. Because nothing's happening. I'm going to make something happen. You try with all of your might to keep your grip, lest you fall. I can only stand up here and give you this word because this is exactly where I've been. After a while, my joy, your joy, and motivation gone. You don't really want to go back to where you came from, but you have no idea where you're going. So fear tries to grip us, and we cry out for what used to be. For those of you who know, we started in the basement. We cry out for the basement. Oh, God, go back to the basement. Give us the basement days, God. Remember when the basement? Remember the basement? Remember the basement? Remember the basement? That's what you do at the beginning of a new day when it's dark and your prophetic words aren't coming to pass. You want to go back to something that you are familiar with. The Israelites were like, look, we'll just go back to this bondage back here because I have no idea where we're going. This isn't looking pretty. Lot's wife is like, I'd rather go back to Sodom and Gomorrah and all the perversion and corruption because I don't know where this is at. It's dark. They were in the beginning of a new day. Fill in the blank for yourself. Take me back to what? I remember when the kids were young. All the dreams we had for them. And now I look at their life and they're nowhere where I thought they would be. I don't know. Fill in your blank. My business. Remember how many employees we used to have? Remember how we were thriving? What happened? I just go back to that. When I first got married, wow. If I could just go back to that. temptation comes to return to what we know. Temptation is another part of the disconnection that God calls us to. Then you're tempted. That's part of the test and trial. Psalm 77, verse 2. In the day of my trouble, I seek the Lord. In the night, my hand is stretched out without wearying. My soul refuses to be comforted. When I remember my God, I moan. When I meditate, my spirit faints. You hold my eyelids open. I am so troubled I cannot speak. I consider the days of old, the years long ago. I said, let me remember my song in the night. Let me meditate in my heart. Let my spirit make a diligent search. Will the Lord spurn forever and never again be favorable? Has his steadfast love forever ceased, and has his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has his anger shut up in his compassion? Is that what you feel like when you're in the midst of darkness and you do not see, even though now revelation and understanding is that it's actually the beginning of a new day? But during that season of disconnection, during that season of temptation and tests and trials, it's really easy to feel confused and want to just give up and try to make changes yourself. Well, maybe I'm missing something in this season. You're not. Wait. I said to someone the other day, I said, look, when you're in the midst of change, let change come to you. Don't try to make change happen. But we want to because we're confused. It feels unsettling. Whew. I tried everything I could possibly think of. And I even believe that there were times I thought it was God, because obviously the prophetic words have been spoken. It has to happen today. And then finally, we've exhausted every single option. The moment that God is waiting for. You surrender.